was found to be completely wrong, and we were caught short in the pace in which the Second World War caught up with us. So whilst you say you hope I am wrong, the fact is with that we can't bank on that as a strategy. I do hope it is something to be considered, because I'm afraid this is the way the proliferation and the advancement, the procurement of nuclear weapons is going. We won't be able to respond if one is used, let's say, against our troops in Eastern Europe with one of our nuclear warheads that we have on our submarines at the moment, because it's not proportional. It would not be proportional response. Maybe that I can leave that with. Let's move towards the surface fleet now. Kevin.
In terms of the latest announcement a couple of weeks ago, you announced a new ship, which is the Type 32. And I just wonder whether you could say what's its role and capabilities and how much it's going to cost.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. It's Marshal Richard Knighton here. I'll pick that up. So the Prime Minister made clear in his statement the importance of shipbuilding and his commitment to increasing the size of the Navy, and in particular the Navy's surface fleet. The Type 32 is the name given to the follow-on capability from Type 31. The broad intent is that will follow on in the same kind of vein as Type 31 as a general purpose frigate that will be open architecture, enable it to fulfill a range of roles. We don't anticipate that work on that ship in terms of construction starting until towards the end of this decade. And the time between now and then we'll use to refine the requirement, to refine the potential design, understand the commercial model, and we'll be in a better place to answer your specific questions about how much it will cost and precisely what it will look like in due course. I'm afraid I can't give you more specific guidance than that, other than to confirm again that the commitment that the Prime Minister has made to both shipbuilding and also to increasing the Navy's surface fleet.
To announce something when you don't know what it actually is or what it's going to cost. But can I also suggest the Type 23s are going out in the next few years. Type 31 isn't coming in until 2027, so there's going to be a gap in the mid-20s in terms of surface fleets. In terms of this new ship, we already know, for example, that Type 31 can't do NATO tasking. So is it envisaged that Type 32 will do NATO tasking?
There's a couple of things I just need to make sure we get clear on the record. So the introduction service of Type 26 and Type 31 is aligned to the retirement of Type 23. So we don't anticipate there being a gap later in this decade. The point about Type 31 is that it is a general purpose frigate. It doesn't have all of the same capability of Type 26, which is the highest end capable, but Type 31 is still going to be attributed to NATO and can still be tasked and used as part of a NATO operation.
It's not, because I've had a reply from the Defence Secretary in terms of a question to that, and it's very clear it can't do those NATO high-end tasks. But can you just talk us through how
Mr. Jones, I said that it can still work for NATO. You're absolutely right. It can't do the highest end task, which is what Type 26 is for.
Come on,
but to be really clear, it can be used for NATO. It can be used
in a
for NATO
very
tasks.
Sorry, it can't do the core tasks, which is the important thing. It's a very limited capability. Could you just talk us through how we're not going to have a gap if 31's not coming until 2017, and you've got Type 23 is going out in the next couple of years?
So there's effectively a 1-for-1 as Type 23s go out of service, Type 31s come into service, Type 26s come into service. So we will manage the availability of the fleet, and actually we expect to see the availability of frigates and destroyers increase over the next 6 or 7 years.
That's not true. Because if you look at the date you've given for 31 now, which is 2027, Type 23s are going to be going out, so it's not one for one, as you described. So there is going to be a reduction in numbers in the mid 2020s.
There are 13 frigates which will be replaced by 13 new frigates, 8 of which will be type 26, 5 of which will be type 31. And as I said, the forecast availability of frigates and destroyers over the next few years is set to increase. So this country, the Navy, will be able to deliver on the strategy that the Permanent Secretary set out at the start of the meeting, which is to have more of our equipment deployed more of the time.
You've been with civil servants too long, because you're going into civil service language here, because I'm sorry, there is going to be a gap. But if you've got a situation whereby, how you describe 13 for 13, that's fine. If they were all to be changed one after the other, but they're not. There's going to be a gap between type 23 going out and type 31 coming in. I just don't know how you can accept there isn't going to be a gap.
So I'll have another go, Mr. James. What matters is the number of ships that are available for tasking and the number of ships that are available for use. We have a range of ships that are in deep maintenance or in preparation for maintenance or recovery from that. And so as we manage our drawdown of the Type 23s and bring into service Type 31 and Type 26s, we know through all of our analysis that we'll have more ships available for tasking over the next few years than we have today or have had in recent past. And that's partly as a consequence of investment in things like the propulsion improvement programme on Type 26 and the investment in shipbuilding in Type 26 and Type 31. What I'd absolutely accept is that we need to make sure we drive both the Type 26 and the Type 31 programme hard to deliver as early as we possibly can. So, and if that enables us to retire Type 23s earlier, then that will make sense from a financial perspective and from a capability perspective.
I mean, I accept what you're saying in terms perhaps by 2029 you'll have the replacement ships. But if you're actually, if you're saying therefore that, so you're basically saying that Type 23s are going to be running right up till 2027. Well, there's a cost involved in that, and there's actually some question marks about whether the hulls can actually last that long.
So Type 23s will be operating right the way up to 2027 and beyond. The point you raise about the hulls and actually the running gear in the ships is a really good one. As equipment gets older, it does become more difficult to, or can become more difficult to maintain and sustain. And what we're seeing is the maintenance periods, the docking periods, extended for a number of our ships. But what we are doing is investing in those ships as they go through those docking periods to extend that life and give them the capability to run on to the point at which we need them to run on as we bring these new ships into service.
There's a huge cost involved in that, and I think certainly on certain of the Type 23s, I understand it, there's a question mark whether you can be able to do that.
The cost associated with the maintenance programme for the Type 23 fleet and Type 45, the destroyer fleet, is well understood. The programme for the docking periods is well established, and we have, as part of the budget settlement, sufficient funding to be able to do what we need to do. And so far, our work and our analysis suggests that will be feasible. And we have confidence that the ships will be able to run on to the dates that we need them to, because we're going to make the right investments in the maintenance of those ships when they next come through their maintenance periods.
Marshal, I was a clear interest. My grandfather and father were both Royal Navy, and I think they'd be turning in their graves at how pitifully small our Royal Navy is. If the 19 surface warships were needed today, how many could put to sea fully crewed and fully equipped and armed?
So as of today, right now, there are 10 of our 19 destroyer frigates that are either on operations, at high readiness, or in workup for operations. In due course, a number of those could potentially be brought up to readiness, but today there are 10 of 19, and as I described to Mr. Jones, we expect actually that number to increase steadily over the next few years as ships like the Type 23s that Mr. Jones described come through those elongated maintenance periods.
Okay, I think the point's made here that then there can't be a gap between replacement capability. Not only that, I'm slightly concerned as well, in absence of a strategy, we don't know what we're going to use these ships for. It's Type 32 has been thrown out there, but we need clarity. And so as you actually said, there's greater activity, increased adversarial maritime activity in the North Sea, and we're going to have to venture towards the South China Sea, I'm sure, over the next decade. Yet the size of our surface fleet over the last 4 or 5 decades has slowly diminished. And I think I would love to see greater clarity and conviction to say our surface fleet needs to increase in size, and with greater forward posture, perhaps less technical capabilities on each ship. And I hope that's going to materialise perhaps with the Type 32, but at the moment we don't know that.
As Mr. Chairman, the promise has been absolutely clear that we will increase the size of the Navy's surface fleet, frigates and destroyer numbers, and as the Permanent Secretary set out, the clear intent is for us to see more of our armed forces deployed more of the time in more places in the world. The precise details of that will be a matter of operational laydown, operational decisions in year, but I'm sure that those principles will be laid out clearly in the integrated review.
If I may, Chair, I think you make a very good point. I mean, there is no doubt that the more technologically advanced and expensive these platforms become, the fewer within an inevitably constrained budget you can afford. And if you want to be in lots of places, then that presents you with a problem. And that is well understood. And I think the Prime Minister has recognised that. And I think there will be further clarity when the integrated review comes out quite shortly. The other point I just would make is that one of the technological advances that we are seeing very rapidly at the moment is in the area of missiles, which pose a much greater threat to our surface shipping than they do to our subsurface shipping. So we need to not ignore the underwater battle space, which is going to, I think, increasingly become a very big feature of what we need to do and invest in. And the last point I would just make on this is that rather as the carrier group deployment next year is going to demonstrate, one of the ways in which you get around not having enough shipping to be able to do absolutely everything you want by yourself is to make sure that your alliances and allies are in good order. And you'll see that in the carrier deployment next year.
Well, talking of the carrier deployment next year, I'm curious as to how our carriers are going to be supported, because we haven't got the fleet solid support ships in place yet to provide that support. We're using aging, I think it's the Fort class, which should have been retired long ago. This has been a very sad story to do with these contracts. Can you update us on what is happening now and how quickly we're going to see a contract delivered?
Thanks, Permanent Secretary. Chair, so in terms of the deployment next year, the Carrier Strike Group 21 deployment, that will be supported by Fort Victoria. Fort Victoria has an out-of-service date towards the end of this decade. In the longer term, exactly as you described, the Fleet Solid Support Ship will provide that capability for the carrier through life, right the way through into the 2040s and 2050s. The Secretary of State was clear that the competition for Fleet Solid Support ship would be launched in the first quarter of next year.
So when are we likely to see that ship? If the competition is launched then, when will we finally see that support ship join the carrier?
It's too early for me to give you a definitive date of when that first ship will be in the water, because some of that will depend on the yards that are used and the design that is used and the time it will take to deliver that ship. I am confident, however, that we will be able to deliver the first ship before Fort Victoria goes out of service, and that's certainly our plan. I don't know if Sir Simon might want to add anything around that, where we are with that competition.
Yes,
Well,
thanks
I
very
didn't
much,
need.
Richard.
Sorry, stop. I didn't need chapter and verse. I just wanted a rough indication as to when we're likely to see HMS Queen Elizabeth have alongside